Now, I'm going to go through some of the things that I typically hear. To the very astute, I usually get I'm black, I'm bearded, and I'm strong. I also get I look like NBA superstar James Harden. I'm most definitely the poorer version. I get hip-hop superstar, Emmy Award winner, Donald Glover, AKA Childish Gambino. Yeah, that too, right? And last but not least, I get Curtis Jackson, AKA 50 Cent. Now, one of my goals is definitely to get rich or die trying. I think Sally Mae is putting the emphasis on or die trying, right? But see, what I don't hear is Phil, you look like somebody that lives with depression and anxiety. Phil, you look like somebody that was suicidal for 15 years, every day, 5 to 6 times a day. They don't say, Phil, you look like somebody that was driving on Interstate 95, wanting to crash your car to end your life. No. Because see, here in America, when we think about mental health, we think about the homeless man who's walking the streets, talking nonsensically to themselves. We think about the white celebrity who takes their life via suicide. We think about the white mass murderer who goes into a high school and takes the lives of innocent children. Or it's usually your president who loves to tweet venom from the hip. But see, rarely does the conversation speak of a father of 2 kids, someone who possesses a master's in exercise science, a master's in social work, somebody pursuing a doctorate. Rarely is it a person of color. Rarely is it a black man like myself until now, because black mental health matters. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is black mental health and why is it differentiated amongst racial and ethnic lines? Black mental health are the individual and collective experiences that influence the wellness of a community. Trauma is the biggest influencer of black mental health. We're talking about historical trauma, slavery, Jim Crow, the civil rights movement, the Tuskegee experiment, up until present day trauma, when you see somebody that looks like you get killed in their home. Rest in peace, Botham Jean. When you see somebody who's living with mental wellness issues get killed by the police. Rest in peace, Laquan McDonald of Chicago, Illinois. Or when you see somebody that looks like you get killed by somebody that looks like you. Rest in peace, Triple X Tentacion. See, when we talk about trauma, trauma is unique to the individual, and I'm no different. There were 3 impacts.
Hello, hello, hello. Happy 2023. I'm so happy you guys could make it back to ITZ. I know we took a little bit of a break, kind of a long break, but it was much needed because we had to get, first of all, we had to rest because we have tons of devices between our
Mental
alcoholism and not sleeping. But we also
I
had
didn't
to
sleep
prepare
much.
going into this 2023 season.
Yeah.
So, first of all, gotta welcome Gina B back.
Hi.
Always stepping in the booth when Brian is far too busy with his social life
Or even
to be
when
on the
Brian's
show.
here. It's been fun to do. We've done a couple where Brian and I are both here, so it's fun. Thank you for having me back, though.
Absolutely.
It's so fun to be here in 2023, and we've had mental health issues ourselves to deal with everyone does over the holidays, right?
I can't really say I have, but I'm sure.
I mean, the stress of holidays are stressful in general.
They are.
I think everybody over the holidays has some sort of mental health issue that they don't really realize that they're living through.
You know what? That's fair. That's
What do
really
I buy
fair.
this person? What does Christmas mean to us? What are we doing? New Year's Eve? Like, is this fun enough? Is this too mellow? Whatever.
And exhaustion from trying to do it all.
Girl.
Your
family.
We won't talk about the stressors
It's a whole different problem.
of a family. And let me also say apologies for the delay. We were having a bit of a technical issue. If you notice in the back, our normal ITZ logo is not back there.
It's not
So
HERE.
we were trying to work
Yeah.
on that and it just didn't work out for us.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to miss the opportunity to have this very important discussion. Brian and I talked about this and we thought it was so important to start off this 2023 year, especially after the death of DJ Twitch, to talk about Black
God.
men and their mental health, more specifically depression and anxiety. We're really going to talk to two clinicians. I think they're clinicians. We're going to hop in here and get an introduction to them, but definitely healthcare professionals who can kind of guide us through what that means, what it looks like, and how do we cope? And are men just being too soft? I have my opinion on that, but we will let the doctor and the therapist answer that. We will hop in with Khalid. I think I'm saying that wrong. Mr. Khalid Scott, with all his, look at all them letters behind his name. He must know what the fuck he's talking about.
Right.
Hello, and welcome to
ITZ.
How you doing?
Hi.
Thank you for having me, family. I really appreciate being on the zone today.
No problem. I think you could do a little bit more of an introduction. What do you
do?
I mean,
got you. I thought you was gonna read the bio. That's it.
Don't take the next 10 minutes, but give us the interesting elevator pitch.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you for having me, Khalid Scott. I am a 30-year social worker and clinician in private practice with international high achievers. And I'm currently in the private practice. I do both individual and marriage therapy. This is my calling from God, helping folks, especially Black folks, get it together and understanding that this muscle is just as important as the rest of the muscles in our body, and that happiness is your responsibility. So do the work to make it happen. So that's me.
Great. Okay, you coming out guns a-blazing for these Black men. I love it. And we have a fabulous young woman, Dr. Delvina. This is my first time meeting you. Welcome to In the Zone. I wanted to do an introduction before the cameras came on, but I know you were kind of hopping around. But welcome and thank you for coming on to have this conversation and this fuckery of a show.
That's right.
So why don't you do a little introduction yourself? And see, ITZ, I did not come on here trying to spout my opinions on Black men's health. We wanted to get actual professionals to come in and provide info for you guys.
Like
so
people.
Dr. Delvina, please, am I saying your name properly?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Perfect.
Delvina.
So, ma'am, oh Lord have mercy. Go ahead and give your introduction.
So yes, hi, I'm Dr. Delvina. I'm a board certified psychiatrist. So a psychiatrist is a medical doctor, a physician who went to medical school and trained for an additional 4 years in a residency. In psychiatry, we train in psychiatry and neurology. My first job, though, is I'm the mother of a 26-year-old Black male in America. I'm also the youngest of my siblings. I have 2 older brothers. I'm very partial to men, especially to Black men. My mother passed away in 2005, so I'm here with my father, my 2 brothers, my son. I'm the only woman in my immediate family, so I'm very pro-man. And besides being a psychiatrist, I'm also a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, where I perform psychiatry for the Army as well. I'm a combat veteran. I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan, been to Kuwait, and I also worked in the Federal Bureau of Prison System as the chief psychiatrist for nearly 8 years. So I saw a lot, heard a lot, seen a lot, heard a lot. In private practice, the same thing. I'm a mental health advocate in the community out here in these streets, telling people about brain love, because folks, like my boy Khalid said, people need to respect the brain and understand that it is the truest and the most important organ, because without our brain, we cannot do anything. You can't think, you can't feel, you can't taste, you can't love, you can't hate, you can't do a freaking thing. I almost said the other word listening to you. So the F-bomb around.
It's that type of show, so let's
So
go.
go ahead and bring it. Yeah, don't
all the
hold
4-letter,
back.
5-letter, 9-letter words.
We're
let's
good with
go.
9-letter.
No, I don't know. I'm just throwing
I'm
something
into
out
it.
there.
Okay.
But
right.
I think she won our audience over with the pro
I think
man.
so. Everybody's like, oh,
I'm
pro man,
surprised
pro man.
they didn't say that Chantel needs to hang out with her more, but I digress.
Don't give them ideas. They
So
will try it.
let's kick this off, right? With I think people have an idea of what they think anxiety and depression are, but we don't honestly know. You don't even if you go through it, you still don't honestly know what those two things are. So Dr. Delvina, why don't you kick us off with explaining to me and Gina and all of our watchers what exactly is depression and anxiety?
So, depressive disorders and anxiety are basically mental health disorders that can occur that impede or impair your social functioning. So, I have patients who come in all day long and say, I have this, I have that, I need medication. But the thing is, it does not become a disorder until you have the symptoms and you also notice that there's an interruption to your daily routine. You have some sort of dysfunction. So oftentimes people can have things like anxiety, aka nervousness, and not have any type of social dysfunction. So you may not be diagnosed with a disorder. It just really depends on the symptoms you present with, the timeline you give, and how they impact you. So depression, for instance, is just a way of describing that someone has had persistent low mood. Depression or depressive disorders, there are a lot of these different disorders. It doesn't mean that you were sad, one part of the day, and so now you have a depressive disorder. It has to be persistent. And as I stated, it's an interruption of your life. And if you don't have low mood or sadness, you have lost interest in doing things. So that's kind of the textbook definition of a depressive disorder. If you have anxiety, you have persistent worry, persistent fear. And that has caused an interruption to your daily routine.
When you say persistent, right? People like that could mean a lot of different things. That could mean over a week. It could mean over 10 years. So can we think about like when we say persistent, and I realize this is not going to be like a hard and fast rule, right? But in general, to give the audience idea, what do we mean by persistent?
I love that question. That's awesome that you're teasing it out. Persistent means that it's ongoing. And depending on the quantity of time, that will determine what type of depressive disorder you have. And also the other associated symptoms that come with it. So Khalid, at the very beginning of this session, held up what we consider to be the Bible and mental health professions. This is how you are supposed to diagnose an individual. There are criteria that people have to meet. That criteria are the signs and the symptoms, a timeline. So it can't be, I had 3 days of sadness or low mood, and so now I have major depressive disorder. It doesn't work like that. So all the different disorders have a timeline. Some of them require that you exhibit symptoms and have, again, social dysfunction for 6 months. Some might require 2 weeks. Some may even be only 3 or 4 days, depending, such as mania.
Okay. Wow, those are a lot of
Yeah,
college-like words. But
I tried to make it as basic as possible. The only thing I said was mania. That might have been.
No, you're making everybody break out their college degrees right now. I appreciate it. Now I'm gonna bring Khalid in for a follow-up question I have for this. We don't, and there may not be a clear-cut answer to this question, but I think people are interested in what causes these disorders. Is this something you're just born with? Do you have to have a traumatic episode?
Are there triggers?
Are there triggers? Do you just wake up one day like eating your grits and bacon and poof, you're depressed? Like what can cause these disorders?
Right. So what happens is, when you take a multiple choice test and you get to letter D or E and it says all the above, that's the answer. So if you was taking your licensing or certification on board exam, that would be the right answer. E, all the above, right? And it depends on the individual, right? And I want to throw this caveat. We do a lot of street assessments. So we got that auntie who has always act kind of odd to us. So we like, what, she goes from 0 to 100 real fast, real quick, especially at parties, right? So my auntie must have bipolar, right? or they act erratic, right? You got that Uncle Walter who acts real erratic. You know what? He must have the schizophrenia,
The schizophrenia.
Right.
Schizophrenia.
And so, or what you got a person who they just got through watching a soap opera and they're really sad and like, well, why you acting like you got depression? And what we want to always get out the professionals that work in our industry is that you don't have a diagnosis unless one of us gives you that by doing an assessment, right?
Okay.
And you might have the signs and symptoms, but if you really think that you are dealing with, depression, anxiety, anything, that is taking your normal life and normal way of doing things away from you, then you should go in for an assessment. Absolutely. And I think that the pandemic brought a lot of things to the forefront, right? Because we got to sit down finally in our busy lives and really think about things, right? And we like, wait a minute, I am noticing that I am feeling this way, and I've been feeling this way a long time, and I don't know why I'm feeling this way. So there has been an upswing of folks entering into mental health services, which is a wonderful thing, right? But again, as anything, pay attention to your personality, pay attention to your body, listen to the things that people are telling you about you. And again, if you have a family history of depression, anxiety, or bipolar, whatever, it can sometimes skip a generation or go right to the next, person. But it is vital that you get assessed to know what you're dealing with. And excuse me, to know that if you need certain treatments, like to go into therapy, to be prescribed medication, So it's very important that we educate ourselves on the world of mental health.
I'm gonna let Khalid get a sip of water. I'm gonna bring Gina in. And because I know we're not clinicians, this is not our area of expertise, but I assume you have questions you'd like to ask.
Oh yeah,
our clinician.
Definitely do. So, is this a situation where you can be ambling along in life and be just fine, and then not really understand that what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis is in fact depression and anxiety? And how, if you're a person who's not necessarily in touch with that, like the audience that we're discussing today, what are the signs internally that this is something that you might want to look into?
Okay.
Whoever wants to hop in can go ahead and start.
Feel free to.
Okay, so life with anxiety. There are telltale signs. So we don't know this, but oftentimes our celebrities have anxiety. So you'll hear someone like Janet Jackson or Beyonce say, prior to going on stage, right, I was nervous. And we would think, wait a minute, you've been doing this since you was a little girl, right? You've been performing all your life. But what happens is something inside like, oh my God, can I do this? The doubt, the stress, the frustration, the sadness. But then you get on stage and then you become your alter ego and say, boom, you turn it out, right?
You're Sasha Fierce all of a sudden.
Absolutely. But prior to when you were backstage, all these things were happening in your head, right? And they were real, right? And then you might say, well, how can I overcome that? It's just the way that your brain reacts to things that may stress you out, frustrate you, causes fear to you. And then that's when the anxiety is evoked.
Don't we all kind of have a little bit of that though? Like a little bit of like a little few, like butterflies if you're about to do something that you're not accustomed to or you're not used to. So where is the difference between I'm a little anxious and I have anxiety? Like, is there a difference?
I'm going to actually ask Dr. Delvina so we make sure we're kind of spreading out all this information and make sure we get all of the knowledge you guys have to provide. So Dr. Delvina, can you kind of hop in and provide some details with that question?
Yeah, so we have to break things down in a way to where folks understand what's considered to be a a normal reaction or an expected reaction. You are expected to be nervous before a major exam. You are expected to get butterflies before you present in front of people. If you're not able to manage those things, let's say you can't talk yourself through it, you can't manage it on your own, and it causes, as I said before, a disruption, then you should seek some sort of intervention or assistance in dealing with your anxiety. Because stage fright, as people commonly call it, is a common scenario. However, people learn, they know what to do to get over it. So for me, if for some reason when I'm presenting or giving a class or speaking in front of other people, if I happen to feel a little anxious or unnerved, what I do is I walk the room, because walking the room for me is helpful to resolve or extinguish my nervousness. And so after, as Khalid just said, after the first few moments, most of the time, it resolves, it extinguishes completely. And then, you just go in full force and you give your best performance, your best speech, your best presentation, whatever it is. However, if you're the person that you're in, all of your entire outfit is drenched in sweat, your throat closes, you're dry, you can't talk, you can't deliver your presentation, then you should seek an intervention. So the difference between the two is just how dysfunctional it is for you and your ability or your inability to manage it.
Okay.
Perfect. So
Thank you.
I was actually going to ask a question before this, but since I never say his name right, actually asked this. Let me set the stage for this question before I ask it to the clinicians. I don't personally think therapy is bad and men seeking help is wrong or that makes you weak. I have heard lots of communication from both men and women that men having all these feelings, men wanting to heal from hurt, men being able to communicate more complex emotions outside of being pissed and being horny, that men have somehow all of a sudden become, for all intents and purposes, women. So I ask this question because I know there are people out there who themselves are asking this question. Like, why therapy? Like, we haven't needed it in all these years. Our granddaddies didn't have no therapy. Our granddaddy's granddaddy didn't have no therapy. And they lived their life fine and moved on and never killed themselves, right? So that's an interesting thing to think about. Why now? And to be fair, we don't have statistics about how many Black men were killing themselves in the 1940s, in the 1920s, in the 1880s. We don't have those statistics. So we honestly don't know if this impacted them. But just let's say for argument's sake, it didn't. Dr. Delvina, why now do we see such an uptick in men being confronted by all of these disorders and all, having all these emotions? Like, what happened? Including the pandemic, right? We know the pandemic had a bit to do with it, but I think my assertion is other things have happened that have triggered that. Can you kind of talk about that?
Wow, that is a multi-layered question. I will try to peel that back. The first thing is about evolution and revolution. We evolve. We are supposed to evolve as people. We have so much information available to us now that we never had before. Our brains are different. From generation to generation, you find that your brain is more pliable. Folks are sharing more information. You mentioned our ancestors and the things that they went through and how were they able to cope. But there are several Black folks, because of generational traumas, the same way that they're passing on, their height, the color of their eyes, their hair, they're also passing on trauma. And so, and people don't speak up, but it has become an okay thing or an acceptable thing to do is to speak up and stop hurting inside. So our ancestors, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and depending on where you're from, my family is from the South. They are from Mississippi. So you learned as descendants of slaves to suck it up, to get over it, just to pray, go to church, and you'll be okay. But times are totally different in terms of the environment, our engagement, who we're around, who we interact with. Things are not as simplified as they once were. Things are very challenging and complicated in life. So it makes it a lot harder. I would say that during a time when we didn't have computers, we didn't have internet, we didn't have access to so many things, we weren't flying around, we weren't driving around, we didn't have so many interactions with other people. Things were one-dimensional. They were simple. So it may have been easier to manage certain things. It may have been, and so don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it was easy to manage as a slave. So I'm not even making that comparison. But what I'm saying is that the challenges that we have been subjected to are multiple, they're multi-layered and more complicated than what our ancestors were exposed to. And also there was a certain culture back then. And that culture was you just accept it and you don't speak up. We don't live in that same culture anymore. Now we have the ability to complain and see other complaints and see, all these concerns on social media. So it changes the dynamics and how we interact with other people. So I think now people are speaking up and we're hearing about it more because people are tired of drowning in their own sorrow. And the only way to get past it is to talk about it and to process it and to vent and to allow yourself to feel emotions. Men are taught to be stoic. They are conditioned. So just because what we see as the stereotype of a man is being acceptable, it's because we've all been conditioned to think that way. And it's wrong. We're all human beings. We all have a brain. Our brains pretty much are very similar in terms of the chemicals it produces, the things that those chemicals are supposed to do for us, the structures inside of the brain, all those things are similar. So to say that a man should not cry, that a man should not complain, that a man shouldn't express himself is very archaic. So we have been conditioned, and when you raise your children that way, that's who they will be also until, the rubber hits the road. If you don't teach your child, men, boys and girls, to express themselves and to share their emotions, they'll grow up and be that stoic man who's angry, who doesn't know how to tell his wife or his girlfriend that he loves her. He'll be the man that can't express that, baby, we got to do something different in the bedroom, because he's not expressing himself. And there's a disorder for that, actually, teaching a man not to express himself and not to share his emotions. So I hope that answered your question.
It beyond answer my question. So I'm going to ask this only to be a troll, because I agree with everything Dr. Delvina just said. Aren't men just hardwired this way, though, Khalid? Like, you all are like born not communicating really, and you all don't have all these complex feelings. You all are just, you're men, right? Like, what is this feeling stuff? That's for women. What is Dr. Delvina talking about here? As a man, isn't this how you all are just hardwired? Isn't this how you're just born?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Dig into that a little bit, like, because there are men, I do a lot of podcasts, right, where men will sit and tell me that men don't have the capability to communicate, which I think is total and complete bullshit. I also hear that men don't have these complex emotions, which I also think is total and complete bullshit. So I want a man, no offense, Dr. Delvina, but I want a man to tell men how much that is bullshit, that they do not have these mechanisms to do the things. And I don't mean to say that you all are women, right? But you all don't have the processes and the mechanisms to do the things that you all see women do. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Emote.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the floor. We are here to dispel belief systems. We are here to dispel stereotypes. And we are here to say there's a new day, right? And us men are taught from soon as we come out the womb, right, to be a certain way, a standard, right? And it has gotten us nowhere, absolutely nowhere, right? So what happens is when I work with men, and to be honest, the first time in my practice where I have more men than women, right? Now, did it take women to get men to come into therapy? Absolutely, it did. Absolutely. Because you all tend to be our bridge, right? You tend to let us know when it's safe, right? Now, that's a blessing and then it's a curse. So you might say, why is it a curse then, Khalid? That's a good thing, right? Right. Men want to feel safe if we're going to be vulnerable, right? Because what we have learned as men, the minute we became transparent, the minute we became vulnerable, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you, right? So I'm also a mentor as well as a social worker and therapist, right? So majority of my mentees are Black young men who are ex-football players and basketball players, right? So we have an image when we think of our athletes, right? We think of what? Hard, right?
Mhm.
We think of, like the doc
Yeah.
said, stoic, right? You know, machismo, right? And let me tell you, each and every one of my mentees, when we are in our safe space to talk, I get the fears and I get the tears, right? I get the inconsistencies, right? I get the tales of I didn't want to sleep with all those women, but I had to impress the guys on the team, right? I had to act a certain way towards women. Why? Because women would tell me that I don't like a man who is nice to me. I like a man who can can grab my wrists and shake me up a little bit. Us men all have two type of buddies. We got the good guy buddy and we got the bad boy, right? And what happens is us good guys, we watch like we're watching a movie. Our bad boys have these fantastic lives, especially with who? Women,
Women.
right? I got a friend who has 8 children by 6 women, never been married. And
He's
my
been
buddy
busy.
for the past 25 years has never been alone. So in my head, it's like, wow, women really like dudes like this? Absolutely. I had a female client tell me, and she was in a 20-year relationship with a man who never married her. They didn't have any kids. And when he left her, he already had a woman that he transitioned to, right? So then she met another guy. Guy was really good to her, right? So I was like, well, client, what's wrong? Why isn't this relationship thriving, right? She was like, he's boring, doc. He's boring. And I said, what do you mean he's boring? I mean, he's so accommodating. He's always asking me what I want. And I'm like, well, in therapy for the past year, you talked about the 20-year guy who left you with nothing, who did not consider you, right? So when good guys hear about these guys, it's like, but that's the template. That's what we're supposed to follow, right? So what we have to do is chip away the sense of, wow, manhood looks like this. Because the reality is true manhood looks like being transparent, being vulnerable, not following the leader, doing things because you want to do it, right? And then one of the things that's really that I tell my clients that's coming in is that, wow, you're really showing how you have really man up, right? Because there is a fear about why am I going to go in front of a stranger and divulge all the personal things about me, that I have erectile dysfunction, that I was molested as a boy, you know, that I don't deal good with heartbreak, that I'm a drug addict, you know, and doing it in a world that tells you, and especially a Black world that tells you your therapist should be your preacher. Your therapist should be your best friend. Why pay Khalid Scott or Dr. Delvina money to go and just tell your problems to. And just like we would tell anybody in our industry, if you fall down a flight of stairs and break your leg, you're going to someone's emergency room. But if this has made you feel like it's broken, what's wrong with going to see a doctor for this? Right?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Now, let me ask you a question. You see a lot of, both of you see a lot of patients, and a lot of, Black men. I'm curious if you see a difference in your clients who were raised by single mothers and ones who were raised with strong fathers.
Yes. Let me answer that real quick. So remember I told you that I have a lot of athletes who are my mentees?
Yes.
When I take on the role as their mentor, guess which ones I have the hardest fight with? The ones with theirs or without? Which one do you think fight me more?
The ones without.
The ones without?
Right.
The ones without.
Because you know what? They're used to getting direction from who? A woman.
A woman.
Exactly.
But when a man stands toe to toe, eyeball to eyeball, and say, young man, you need to do this. Who you think you are? You ain't my dad. Why are you?
Right. Is that because they were told growing up that they were the man of the house? Like, was that the pressure that they were put under, in your opinion, of, growing up in a house with a single mom? Or where do you feel that comes from?
It's just because I'm not used to being held accountable by someone who looks like me.
Okay.
I'm being used to being held accountable to someone who's the opposite of me and who has to go outside of her natural role, right?
Mm-hmm.
And become hard. So as a woman, if I'm raising a son, I can't just be all extra feminine because I'm scared I'm going to do something to my son, make him be a certain way. So I got to be a little hardwired with him. And it sends a mixed message to boys. Wait a minute, women are not supposed to be hard like that. Mama, why are you acting hard towards me? If I
want to take a small beat. I want to get Dr. Delvina to kind of hop in here too and provide her opinion on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I concur with everything that Khalid has said. I think that one of the biggest issues in our community is babies making babies. We've had that issue for a while. And also when people make these children, they don't take care of them. They don't want to be involved in their lives. And so children need both parents.
Yes.
They need both of their parents. Women who engage parental alienation, that is a problem. That's a problem in all communities, but I see mostly Black patients, so I see it a lot. Women who want to take out their dissatisfaction in the relationship or who are scorned, and so they don't want the kids to see the father, or they put up roadblocks and don't want the kids to see their father. That is a big problem in our community. Women need to know you can't raise your children just you. They will be missing something. Yes, I know people are going to say, my mama did it, my daddy did it, whatever. They're going to say all these people who did it and claim they were successful. But that's why so many of our people are broken, because they didn't have that. And when you don't have that, if you don't have a parent who can will and deal and move between both roles and do it effectively, there are some people who have done that and their kids are fine. Everyone's good. But for the most part, I would say there's probably more children who came from broken homes where the parent could not move between both roles and do it effectively and adequately. So one thing that needs to stop, when your relationship doesn't work out, it has nothing to do with the children, nothing at all. So allow your kids to see the mother, allow your kids to see their father. Don't talk bad about the parent. Be a freaking adult. Be mature. Stop taking out your aggressions and your dissatisfaction with the person who has nothing to do with it. What was that?
No. Not you. Keep going.
Yeah.
It's a comment we need to handle in a second when you
we'll
complete your thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and and I'm not saying only women do it, men do it too. Men can be scorned. But as I share with my family, friends, and patients, for the good of the child, sometimes you got to compromise and you have to bend more than your 40-50%. Sometimes women are like, well, I'm always doing this or doing that or whatever. You may have to do that to keep the peace for your child, and that's okay. That is okay. It's not always going to even out. You got to think about your child first.
Mm-hmm. Jay, can you go up 5, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, perfect.
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Saunders.
The black man was giving insight on black men, and boom, let's stop him. Midthought to ask a black woman. Let me be
Well,
super...
let me. Can I respond to that?
Get him, girl, get him.
You can respond.
Let me. So, and with all due respect, sir, Khalid, I'm sure Khalid, you will agree with this. You had several minutes. You had the floor. He is here because of a black woman. So let's not do this. You're talking about he was stopped mid-thought. He had several minutes to express himself. So it's okay. We're sharing the floor, and that's okay. We're not here to be there's no division here. We don't want to have division. There's no competition. We are sharing information. He had the floor for several minutes, and they turned it over to a black woman, which is why he is here. And that's why you're here too, sir. A black woman brought you here. Well, of course, with the help of some sperm. This we know. But
That
it
was
ain't
so
enough
funny.
to just have that sperm. You gotta have the body too. You need the body, you need the vessel, you need all of that.
He's like, oh, geez, I just shared a thought. But see, the problem is the thought is indicative of a mindset, and the mindset shouldn't be, hey, we're cutting off the black man.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
The black woman is actually advocating for the same thing. We're all on the same team here.
And if we recall at the beginning of this conversation, she said, and I quote, she is pro man.
Right.
So everything she is advocating for, everything she is saying is in, quite frankly, way more advocacy than I have for black men. And that's just the truth of the matter. So what insight she's sharing is for your benefit. It's not to man bash. She has not said anything that is man bashing. Everything has been an advocate for you guys. Her insight, as well as Khalid, because Khalid has shared some gems too, is for the point of this show.
Right.
It's to tell black men that you have support. You have ways you can cope with what's going on with you. And we have not one, but 2 clinicians on here to provide that level of detail,
who represent both sexes, right?
Yes.
So you have support on the female side, you have support on the male side. I mean, I think everybody is an advocate for mental health in the black community in general. So anyway,
but this leads into a very interesting question. I always, and this is my personal opinion. This is not the opinion of In the Zone podcast. This is Sean's personal opinion, that men prefer, and this is obviously not in totality, right? This is not in totality, but this is my opinion, that men prefer to receive advice and support from other men. I could be 1,000% wrong from this. I could be making that shit up. But Khalid, since I cut you off, my bad, brother. Is that true? I mean, just like, fuck these hoes. I want to hear this shit from
fuck these hoes. Now we got all the way to fuck these hoes. Okay. Go ahead. What do you think, sir?
Well, if you look behind me, I belong to a fraternity, right? That I joined when I was a kid, right? 18, 19 years old, right? We play organized sports, pee-wee, when we're 5 years old, right? We go to the park and we find, all the little boys in the sandbox, and we gather. So men have a camaraderie that's just, and you all have a camaraderie, but ours looks different. We handle chaos and confusion differently. We handle it right then and there because we want the brotherhood, right? And I think what Michael was just trying to say was, ladies, we're used to getting information from women. We don't see a bunch of black male clinicians, right? In Illinois, there's black male clinicians at that. We're a small number. So I think what Michael was just trying to say is, wow, we got a brother who's here to give some wisdom, and we go to what we're used to going to, right? our go-to are women, right? And we love you, absolutely. But now there's this fascination, like, wow, like the reason why I have a long wait list of men, because it's like, oh my God, it's refreshing that I can go and sit in front of someone who looks like me, right? Who has probably the same or close proximity background as me. You know, I'm a veteran. I'm in a fraternity. I went to college. I went to high school on the South Side, CVS. I grew up in the hood. So when I'm meeting my male clients, the camaraderie, but a therapeutic camaraderie happens right then and right there. Even when I'm mentoring boys and men, I get the ladies, and this is the wonderful thing that you do. I get, Khalid, can you mentor my son? Can you mentor my brother? Because even you women know that the men in my life need to have that man-on-man time, right?
Yeah.
I hear wives say all the time, take my husband, go out with him. He's getting on my damn nerves.
Exactly. I am.
Take him to the strip mall if you want to, but get him out the house. His feet stink. You know what I'm saying? So, this is refreshing for men. This is what yeah.
No, I was just I heard a really interesting statistic today. One of my friends is one of my really good friends actually he works with charter schools. He's kind of in the executive team of charter schools, and he was telling me that, and I was telling him what our topic was tonight. And he said that what's interesting is that you have a higher chance of going to play professional ball than you do of having a Black male school psychologist, which I thought was super interesting. I didn't realize that there was such a dearth of professionals in mental health among Black men. So you are
right,
fighting the good fight.
and absolutely, and the thing is, even me working in this field of social work, it's a stigma that men who do social work must be gay, right? Or soft.
I've never heard that.
You know what I'm saying? But it is. And what happens is, like, I work at the VA, Jesse Brown VA, right? So let me give you a staggering fact.
I was just there earlier this week.
So you already know 90% of the men in that VA hospital are Black.
Yes.
Yes,
Guess
they are.
how many Black male social workers there are that work in that entire building?
You.
It is 7 of us.
That's more than
That's a lot.
Out of 160 social workers, there are 7 Black men.
Wow.
And I recruited 3 of them when I started 7 years ago.
Good for you. No, it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
You're contributing
because the veterans need to see my face. They need to see my face.
100%. My fiance is a part of a group called Leave No Veterans Behind, and it's he's a veteran and he goes to the VA sometimes, and it's crazy. It is how few Black men there are that are in those levels of actually like administering the assistance as opposed to needing the care.
Can I just interject something really quickly?
Yeah, absolutely.
Please do.
Well, don't cut off the Black man.
You're so messy.
Anyway, I'm saying, like, we don't want to cut off the Black
You
man.
are so messy. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Dr. Delvina.
Yeah, no worries. So it's sort of dovetailing off of what Mr. Scott has been saying, and that is this: Black men, and this is why I'm such an advocate for Black men, because they've been the target for so long. This whole pipeline to jail situation really targeted Black men more than it did young Black women. Black women are seen as less threatening. We're seen as, we're not typically in general, we're not intimidating. People are intimidated by Black men. Black men are treated unfairly. So they really didn't get a good break. So the odds are against them that, and depending on where you come from, the odds are really against you that you will graduate high school. Graduating high school at a point in time was a huge deal for Black boys to graduate high school.
100%.
If you look at the statistics and the studies, Black boys are mistreated by teachers in the public school system more than any other subpopulation. So if you can't graduate high school, how the hell will you go to college? if you make it to college, so you have to go through these different steps to become a professional, to consider becoming a therapist, a social worker, a Black school psychologist. In general, Black psychologists in America are less than 5%. They are underrepresented. So, and then if you say a Black male school psychologist, that's even more specialized. Psychiatrists in the country were less than 1% of the population.
Yeah. Can we, because this is a really great, and I don't know if you had another question, because I want them to kind of talk about what Stephanie, and thank you, Stephanie, for this comment, because I think this is something interesting to kind of talk through. And I want both Dr. Delvina and Khalid to kind of hop in and to discuss this. It was mentioned earlier that more Black men are seeking mental health services. Do you think there's still an uphill battle to get the message out to the Black community that's seeking therapy? Where are we trying to go? I think we get the point of the question. The small typo in there. Do we still think it's an uphill battle for Black people to seek clinicians? I'll let whoever wants to hop in first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, understand the diaspora is more than just African Americans. We got our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, Haitians and Jamaicans, and the stigma of mental health or mental illness is so much greater in those Caribbean communities. So what I see, it's a huge uphill battle to get folks into treatment. When you have a parent who's telling you there's nothing wrong with you, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you, people are not going to feel comfortable seeking care. And men even more so than women, because, for women, it's acceptable for us to want to talk and chit chat and process our feelings. But with men, it's something that they don't do. They're not allowed to open up. They're not allowed to be vulnerable. They're not allowed to be transparent. So we have so much farther to go. And that includes encouraging our children to become Black psychiatrists, Black psychologists, more Black licensed clinical social workers and mental health counselors. So that's why it's important for us to be out here in these streets, sharing information, mentoring these children, because if you sit in your office and all you do is see patients, no one will ever know that you exist. You got to do more than that. You got to take care of the community. And the other thing I'm going to say is this. There are more Black mental health professionals, and Mr. Scott, if you're in this category, no offense to you at all, but some of our mental health professionals are not taking insurance. They want to be self-pay only. You're not going to reach the masses not taking Medicaid, not taking HMOs and PPOs and just saying you want people to pay out of pocket because you're trying to get rich off of this. This ain't for the faint of heart. If you're out here just to make money, now mind you, of course, I have a fee, but I have a sliding scale fee, and I also take every insurance. Any insurance that will allow us to be on the panel, we take it. So I think that's also a challenge in the community, is that you have people, it's just become so popular, it's been trending, and especially during COVID, everybody and their mama want to be a mental health professional, including coaches. So
coaches,
take insurance, people. Take insurance, because you cannot reach these people who need it the most if you want to make people pay out of pocket each and every time.
Damn, she came for some clinicians next. Dr. Khalid, hop in here, please.
Listen, I'm coming for you, because you ain't doing nothing in the community if you just want people to pay you cash.
Right.
I'm with it.
Right. And I have a network of Black clinicians who I work with. So because I'm filled to capacity, I'm like, okay, well, here, I'm going to give you a list of both Black female and male clinicians. Give them a call. Majority of us accept all insurances. And yes, we do have sliding scales and fixed scales, right? Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. To answer the original question, is it still an uphill battle? Yes and no, right? And let me say it like this. Before, it was an uphill mountain. Now it's down to a hill, right? Because now it's in vogue to be in therapy. It's like it was back in the 90s. It was in vogue to join Bally's, right? Because I can be going, work out, hang out.
$29.99.
Right? So, I have a therapist now. For real? Give me his name. Oh, I got a Black male therapist. Oh, how cute is your therapist? She cute? Man, it ain't supposed to be about that. Well, is she cute? 'Cause
I'm
now,
like,
look,
hello.
hey, whatever we got to get you into the room, let's get you into the room. But again, what we
Don't
still
say that. Don't say
No,
that.
no,
But you have some
no.
You
OnlyFans therapists on there.
Right. But,
You're charging a whole different
I'm
fee.
joking, but the thing is that sometimes you have to have different incentives for different people, right? But the thing is that, hey, this is for you to be well. But the biggest thing I think that we still got to overcome is stereotypes and stigmatization. So, for instance, if anybody knows me, they know that I love this little girl right here, Anaya Scott. You don't understand that when I got divorced 10 years ago, how I got talked about because I was a participatory dad, right? I got talked about because I would do Facebook posts doing Anaya's hair. That I would take her to go and get her hair done, that I would go in Macy's and buy her dresses, that I had to go to Target and buy her first bra and her first woman stuff. And I would get dogged out, right? So here it is. I'm trying to be the daddy that you all say you want your kids to have, and you get talked about. So again, when men don't feel safe, it takes a lot to be a leader internally, and say, you know what, the hell with the critics. This is what I got to do. Well, fast forward, my daughter's at Amherst, at $80,000 a year school for free. She graduated at number 3.
Come on, girl.
Right?
Right.
And has been to 40 states out of the 50 and 6 continents out of the 7, traveling with daddy. So when we start feeling comfortable and confident in what we need to be doing out here and start worrying about the stereotypes or how our people going to look at us, then we'll be so much ahead. So I feel great that me and the doc are doing the work that we're doing to make it comfortable and to make it in vogue to be in therapy. And watch, every time I do one of these podcasts, my inbox is flooded.
See, you know what? That's the key thing, though. And so, you know, I like to personally end these things with calls to action. And your critics, that says more about them than it does you.
Absolutely.
Whatever people are criticizing, that's their problem, not yours. And so everyone should just do what it is makes them feel better, because fuck them. If they're not paying any bills in your house, then they have no say in what you do. But anyway, a call to action here would be, so what do people do? Like, where do people find you? Where is there a list? Is there some place where people can go to find a list of if you feel more comfortable with a Black therapist? Like, what's the next step for people who are watching this and have decided that therapy is something that they need and they'd like to seek it out?
Yeah, you know, Google has everything. There is a Black psychiatrist network. There is a website for that. If you Google Black psychiatrist, that network should come up. There's also, of course, people know about Black girl therapy. The easiest way, especially if you want to use your insurance, is to start with your insurance plan. Put in your zip code. Insurance plans have become more culturally sensitive, so you can state what you want in terms of, you know, if you want a man or a woman, a Latino or a white person or a Black person or whatever. If you want someone who's sensitive to LGBTQ issues or those types of things, you can put in all of these different criteria and it'll crank something out for you. Another good site is psychologytoday.com. Psychologytoday.com is only as good as the people who submit to it, the mental health professionals. So everyone is not on that site. It just depends. And also, I would say on social media, if you do hashtags, Black psychiatrist, Black mental health professional, Black LCSW, doing hashtags help too. Mental health is no different than any other thing that you have to do in your life. You may have to research. You get out here and research the car dealership you want to buy your car from. You get out here and research the type of car you want to buy. You get out here and research when you want to go buy a house or move somewhere. So you have to do the same thing in creating or putting together your clinical care team, not just your mental health professional, but also the rest of your doctors and physicians and clinicians. So sometimes we got to spend time finding the person we want to be a part of our circle.
Right. So, you know, here's a quick question for you, because sometimes people will try out a therapist and maybe not feel a click? Like, is it okay to meet a person as a therapist and say, this person is not the vibe that I need, and just kind of abort mission and find another person? Like, I mean, I know it's
Yeah.
okay, but like, people need to know that's okay.
Absolutely. When I do my first initial session with people, I tell them, go and watch a television show called Ayanla Fix My Life.
Oh my God, I was on that
Right?
show.
And so, right.
Don't bring back
what I tell
memories,
people
okay? I'll tell you about that
but what I
later.
tell folks is that I'm the male version of Ayanla, kind of. And what I mean by that is, on the first session I have with you, we're going to get to the crux, the core, the foundation of what's ailing you now. We don't have time to play. You're paying me your decent salary to come in here and help get you to a better place and to get better off. So come in here and let's get ready to pull your sleeves up and do the work.
Okay,
And you have a right to interview me. After 10 minutes, you don't like me, I'll give you a list of other clinicians to seek out. But I've never lost anyone.
And so if someone's planning on getting married, you recommend therapy?
Absolutely. Before,
100%.
during, and even after.
No, I believe it. I'm getting married at some point soon. I don't know. And so I'm an advocate of premarital therapy, and maybe during. But, I'm just throwing that in there. And if somebody is on the fence about therapy, about whether do I need it, do I not need it, Black man, what do you have to say to them? And then we can close.
Come in and see me. Come in and do 3 sessions.
You're in Chicago, Khalid. You're in Chicago?
Yes.
You're in Chicago. Are you licensed? Where are you licensed?
Just here in Illinois. Just here in Illinois. And we do a lot of teletherapy now. So we make it real simple for you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Great. And people can reach. And what about you, Dr. Delvina? Tell us, are you in Illinois?
No. I'm in Florida.
You're in Florida.
I'm in Florida.
Ooh, them people in Florida definitely need
Florida's
some
going to Florida. So are you licensed? Are you only licensed in Florida, or how can people in other states reach out to you, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'm pending licensure in Maryland, Illinois, California, and Texas. But there's different ways to do things. If you're coaching and it's not a mental health session per se, or if you need coaching regarding something specific, you can talk to the person, and there can be some sort of collaboration. But in terms of prescribing medications to someone who's in another state, unless a physician is licensed in that state, that you should not do that. So, but as he said, if you need to find out information, or you need to find a therapist or a mental health professional or a psychiatrist, if you reach out to me, I'll refer you to folks I know in some of the different states or the different areas.
Great. Right. So if you like these two, reach out to them. If they don't operate in your area, they can refer you.
So I'm gonna give each clinician 30 seconds, and I'm gonna start with Dr. Delvina, so Khalid doesn't get cut off by the Black women.
Oh, you were saying
close out. What do you want people to know about you? I hear you have a podcast. Plug whatever you want to plug. Let the Black men know whatever you want them to know.
Yes. Okay. So I have a podcast. It's called The Brain Love Podcast. It's on all podcast platforms. It's every Sunday night at 8:00. May will be 3 years. I also authored some books on mental health. It's Brain Love and Brain Sleep. They're on Amazon. And I want people to learn how to just love and stop being so judgmental, stop being so hateful, stop. Black women love each other. When you see one another, speak, say hi, embrace. Let's love people. Let's love our children. We got to stop bullying. Bullying is also what we didn't get into any of that stuff, but bullying in the childhood and teenage years is definitely a factor in how the type of adult that they become. It's traumatizing for a lot of children, and our Black children have been killing themselves at higher rates than ever before. Bullying has a lot to do with that. So we got to have brain love. We have to have love for one another. If you have negative feelings and you can't get past that, go see someone. Go see a mental health professional, to be specific. Because if you're negative all the time and you have an ugly disposition, you might have something called a personality disorder. We didn't break that down, because everything ain't depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and bipolar. Some people out here just ugly. for no
Damn.
reason, and you need to go see someone so they can help you process and be a happier person, so you
I
can
don't like ugly.
contribute to where in a relationship you can contribute because you know how to love yourself, then you'll be able to love other people.
Man, you must spend a lot of time on PMU, but I digress. Anyway, Dr. Khalid, 30 seconds.
Okay.
What do you
All right.
plug whatever you want to plug? You got some books, you got a podcast, you want to just tell Black people to love each other, go.
Okay. Well, first of all, I hope we can have a part 2 to this, please.
Oh, I'll talk to you I'll talk about that in a second.
Okay. Second of all, I want to echo Doc's words. Have a love affair with yourself first. Have it first, because when you are in love with you, you tolerate no mess.
That's right.
No more. Right? And that's what we're trying to teach you. Love you first, and then it will sprinkle out to everybody else, right? The way to get a hold of me, I'm on all social media platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, and whatever else, Instagram, Khalid Scott. I believe in us. That's why I work with Black men, Black women, and Black children. 30 years of my life dedicated to you all. And I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. And I'm mentoring young Black men who are getting their LCSWs now. Because when I pass the baton over in 10, 15 more years, there's going to be new soldiers out here to help us, right?
Good.
Invest in yourself. Get into therapy. There's no more shame with it. In fact, it's a wonderful thing, and you'll feel better, and you owe yourself this. This is a beginning of a new year, right? New year, new you. Start off the right way. Call us up tomorrow morning. Pass it on. Tell everybody to do therapy, right? Because we deserve good lives. And I thank you again for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much
Gina,
for joining
you have
us.
anything to add?
I think everyone who thinks they even it has an inkling that they need therapy should seek it out.
Okay.
So that's it for me.
So I got a couple of things before we sign off. Number one, Brian and I do not normally ask our audience to do this, but right now, Black men and their mental health is number one on my mind all the time. I have men in my life that I am encouraging to figure out ways to cope with whatever is going on with them, whether it's writing, whether it's exercise, whether it is going to talk to somebody. I am regularly advocating for them to do that. So this is a conversation very near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to ask every single person watching this show, I need you to share it because there are so many people out there that need to see it. So again, don't normally do this. So I need all 22, 25 of y'all in the hundreds that's going to come after. You need to share this on your page because Black men need to hear this message. Okay. Second part, there will be a part 2.
Yes.
Part 2 will actually be, and I'm going to use Brian's little name for this. It's going to be how Black women can support Black men in this and ever.
That'll be fun.
And for Brian, he also wants to talk about how women ain't shit about making men go to therapy.
Come on, Brian. Come on, Brian.
So I think it's important for Black women to hear, how we sometimes contribute to men's mental health and how we can be that bridge to get them the mental health support that they need. So that's going to be next week's show. We're going to have 2. Not that I wouldn't love to have you guys back, but we like to spread the wealth for clinicians. We'll have 2 additional clinicians come on. Gina will be here working with me, and Brian Foss will bury himself out of his social endeavors to come on here and tell women how they ain't shit. So that is next week's podcast.
We need a lot of estrogen against Brian.
7:10. Thank you, Dr. Delvina. Thank you, Khalid.
Thank you.
You guys were amazing. Thank you, audience, for watching. I enjoyed the comments. I saw 80% of them. I love the engagement. I love the love for Black men and for Black community. And until next week, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.